know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it back there. Yeah, I got game, got in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it turnpike miles. Yeah, it's Google signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock. I be doing big things.
Welcome back, everyone, to the newest edition of Once a Week. I'm Billy Jane Lewis, and as you can see, we have another incredible guest for you. I truthfully had the pleasure of meeting our guest in person a few weeks ago in New Hampshire, and with the conversation we had so briefly, you could tell that we can bring so much to the table for all of us, and she, truthfully, in her journey, has brought so much to the table for everyone. She's a writer, she's a new author at that, with her new book cataloging her journey across the country, where she pedaled for peace across the southern tier of the United States, and in that had numerous experiences and numerous challenges, which we're going to touch on. But on top of all that, guys, she's an activist, she's an artist, sharing her music and her art to create an impact to those she comes across. Everyone, I give you Elisabeth Dreshaj. Got it right. Elisabeth, I appreciate you for being here, and I can't wait to dive into this conversation with you.
Billy, I'm so stoked.
Awesome. No, I'm glad. But no, like I said, I met you a couple weeks ago. I was up there for a buddy's bachelor party and whatnot, and we came across you, and you could tell I overheard your conversation with someone else at the bar when you were helping them on your journey of pedaling for peace across America. And I was so intrigued by it, I had to ask you about it. So you filled me in a little bit on that, but tell us about you. Tell us about just that journey, but more so, what sparked you to have the idea, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab my bicycle for people, not motorbikes. Like, you know, because I have a buddy that, you know, he's going to watch this episode. He was a co-host on this show before. He took his motorcycle from the United States down to Mexico, down to South America. He did that, and his journey brought so many challenges and experiences. But you took a bicycle, and that's just, to me, is so much tougher. So tell us, what sparked you to even do that, you know?
Yeah. I was just actually talking to someone yesterday about it, and it was 90% mentality and 10% physical. I really believe that. And so my mind was just fully in it. For 5 years, I had the dream before moving to Maui to actually walk across the country. And I wanted to tell everyone about where the source of love comes from, talking about unconditional love, which comes from within us. And it's beyond the thoughts and the mind. This source exists within our hearts. And so when I discovered this, I was like, I need to tell everyone. And so that's what sparked my dream to walk across the country. Yeah. And then I moved to Maui spontaneously, and I've been living there for 5.5 years. And I know that was so important for this journey, for my time that I've been living on Maui, and all that I've learned throughout the 5.5 years to prepare me to actually make the journey across the country. And over those years, it evolved into riding a bike. So when I made the decision in September of last year to officially do it, I asked my spiritual teacher if I should walk or if I should ride a bike. And she instructed me to ride a bike. So I did. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I love how you mentioned the unconditional love aspect, because, you know, for people listening right now, that is 100% fact. There's an unconditional love. There's a source energy that connects all of us, whether you call it God, whether you call it universe, whatever you might call it, that's in you and guiding you every step of the way. But one thing, Elisabeth, that I love is you mentioned how that dream, that idea to walk across the United States with this journey was sparked in you at a younger age. And that, to me, is unconditional love at its finest, because that, to me, you call it your higher self, you can call it your angels, your spirit guides, you call it God. That is putting you in the direction of the journey you're meant to walk. That's your spirit guiding you every step of the way. So it comes to us at a young age. Like, people listening right now, if you have a dream, if you have a goal, if you have an idea that you want to bring into the world, that's your spark. And it might take longer for some people. It might happen all at once, whatever it might be. Your creativity and your journey to take steps towards that is what brings it alive. So you going to Maui, as you said, that prepared you for this journey, and then talking to your spiritual teacher who was there to help you along the way. to me, those are key points that stick out that shows you unconditional love was guiding you every step of the way. And that's phenomenal, right?
You said that so wonderfully. For
Perfect.
anyone listening, that's the truth. Yeah. To allow, I like to call it following the golden thread. So allow the spaciousness for the dream to unfold. It's like when you plant a seed for a tree, a mango tree, for example, that doesn't just fruit the next day. It takes years for it to fruit and eventually ripen and produce something that's delicious. So
Yeah.
our dreams are the same.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's awesome. And it's funny you mentioned the golden thread. We're going to talk about your book in a second. I'm going to ask about it, but it's funny. But people listening right now, prior to us even recording, I mentioned to Elisabeth that I find it incredible that she just wrote her first book and whatnot, but I'm in the process of trying to bring my book ideas to the table. And so for you to mention the golden thread right now, Elisabeth, my first book idea that came to me 8 years ago at this point is called The Golden Strand. And what it is, right, is showing us how to find our purpose in life, because our purpose has been looking us in the face from, you can say day one, but believe it or not, it's before day one when you're choosing this journey and everything like this. But a lot of people today struggle with finding what their purpose is. They struggle with they might fall into different types of jobs, but they don't find that love, that unconditional love, that creativity, that passion that's there. So for a lot of us, when we go through experiences in life, your experiences hold a key that puts you in the path of your purpose. And to me, that means there's a golden strand connecting all these moments in your life together, trying to get you to look in this direction. And when you start to take action steps in that area, you start to become your best self. You start to become your higher self, but you're acting on that purpose. So it's funny you mentioned golden thread, because that's literally connected to the book I'm trying to write and teach people, like, hey, your purpose has been with you at all the time. Let's look back in your experiences and see which ones stand out the most to you as a little kid, as maybe a teenager, whatever it is. And it's incredible seeing people like, I never thought of it that way, but there is a golden thread connecting you every step of the way. And that's incredible.
Yeah, it's far out.
Yeah,
and
right?
simultaneously right here.
Exactly. It's all happening at once. Right? But let's talk about your book right now. So give us the title of your book. Is it Pedaling for Peace Across America? I don't like tell us about it right now.
It's so the name of my bike, my mom actually named it, and so her name is Serendipity.
Yep, exactly. Right.
She has a much longer name of Serendipity, Radhe Sham, Sarasukino Bhavantu, many different. It depends on the day, really, when we were writing, but Serendipity is like the name. And so I decided to name my book Serendipity because it just kind of made sense.
Yeah.
And
sure.
The subtitle is A Soul's Journey Discovering Peace.
That's awesome. Okay.
And so I left it, instead of peace within or peace without, I left it just peace, because the whole journey was discovering peace inside and outside of myself and across the country.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. And I know you mentioned to me, but it releases next week, right? And so people can grab it. So let's talk about it so people can kind of really get sparked with it. So one thing with traveling across the country, I can only ask this because my buddy who did it with the motorcycle, but it's finding peace in yourself. But that peace, for people listening right now, I think we all get an idea of peace where it's going to come from happy, joyous, all these good, loving, positive moments, which is true. Peace will be involved in those 100%. But at the same time, peace can be created from the struggles, can be created from the trials and tribulations we go through, because it's trying to create something in you. It's trying to evoke something in you so you can get to that next version of yourself, that next level, if you want to call it that. So along the path, I know for a fact there's no way that was all smooth sailing. So what challenges came across? What popped up along the way? I think when we were talking to you when we first met, you mentioned certain challenges like flat tires and that stuff. But what else happened along the journey of this bike ride? Because it's fascinating to me how you just I'm going for it, and you've been planning it for so long.
Yeah, really, I couldn't plan day by day what's happening and where I'll be and how long it was going to take. I really just allowed myself the infinite spaciousness for whatever was meant to happen and unfold. Yeah. And honestly, it's funny, in the moment of the most challenging days, when at the end of the day, I call my family or my friends and I'm like, I think I'm done, crying, wiped out, completely exhausted, sunburnt or whatever. Those days are the ones that I reflect on the most. And I talk about the most because they were the most like some of the most impactful moments that really changed me and taught me where my edge was, and then allowed me the opportunity to either meet it there or discover what goes a little bit beyond it and grow through the process of my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, there, and it was a wild, I did not expect, you can't expect, or all the things that are going to happen. You can't imagine what's really going to happen when you send yourself into something like this peace pilgrimage. And I didn't know that one of my biggest challenges was going to be my own mind. Like, I have done so much meditation and teaching meditations and mantras and kirtans and, so much of this spiritual work, but
Right.
really applying it to this scenario where I'm out there in the middle of absolutely nowhere on a bike.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
now it's like I'm being put to the test, and I didn't know that my mind was going to be one of the toughest challenges. And what it was for me was the fear of the unknown, the fear of the potential flat tire, or me getting lost on this random back road in the middle of the desert, completely by myself, surrounded by huge cactuses, and like, what if I get a flat out here, in the mind, creating these scenarios. But in those moments, it gave me the opportunity to bring my awareness to the present moment, to take a deep breath and recognize that what I'm thinking of is not what's happening in the moment. I didn't have a flat tire when I was in the middle of the desert and on this back road. I was completely fine, but it was the fear of the idea of it happening that I was getting caught up in. And once I brought myself into the present moment and just chose to exist there and keep riding, every time it was like, wow, it worked out, and just continuing, like, so that mind, those thoughts is the fear, and the choice of going beyond that fear is the faith of recognizing. And my book talks about this, is it's fascinating that, it is a type of, perhaps, like, a defense mechanism of our minds to want to protect us from these situations that could happen. That is one, one scenario of an outcome. However, there are an infinite amount of other possibilities that could happen, And so instead of just fixating on that one scenario that most of the time tends to be the worst case scenario that the mind wants to go to first, just choosing, like, okay, I see that, but there's also this other potential that it will all work out, and just choosing that, to not just fixate on that one, I guess you could call it the worst case scenario, and allowing the spaciousness for something else to unfold. And every time I did that, I got God, the universe, like you said, there's many words to describe the infinite, but would show me that beyond my fear, and embodying that faith led me to the opportunity for it to all work out. And as an artist and a creator, that also has changed my life and my approach to my work and anything that I do, because that mind wants to come in and, potentially, and have the fear of the worst case scenario. But recognizing that that's not the ultimate outcome, that there are so many other outcomes that are possible. And all I have to do is just continue having faith and moving forward, and then being open to what unfolds.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's all incredible. I love that, Elizabeth. That's for people listening right now. I would love for you to rewind that and listen to everything she said, because it connects to so much of all of our journeys. Because even just the prep time for you to do all the meditations, the mantras, to really hone yourself, essentially hone your mind for it to get to a place where it could go deeper. And so we meditate now, we pray, we do all this stuff because we're trying to grow spiritually. But growing spiritually is being able to use those tools when you need them, not just, oh, I'm gonna, it's great to meditate. I meditate before hopping into this. It's great to find that peace in the moment, but when you can find the peace in the moment when there's so much essentially chaos going on around you, you are a different being walking in that chaos. You're now a peaceful being walking. You can shine that light, shine that love to others. But for you to go through that process and find essentially in yourself the awareness to be like, all right, where am I right now? All right, yes, one option is I'm stranded here. And I can follow that fear, as you said, the worst case scenario. I can follow that and follow that and follow that. For anyone listening, 99% of us do that on a daily basis, where we think of the worst possible. It could be you at work, it could be you in a relationship, it could be you in whatever it is, driving your car, road rage, whatever it is. And we'll sit on a thought and we'll create more and create more and create more of this thought. From a emotional standpoint, you've already experienced all the fear and all the pain and all the anger and all the stress before something even happened. And there's, as Elisabeth said, there's infinite possibilities. That one that you focused on might never happen. It might be something extraordinary that happens, but because you've already focused on the fear or the pain of what it could feel like, you're experiencing it now, which in turn, if we want to throw in other terms of law of attraction, law of resonance, all these other areas that are manifestation that are central to all of us, if we're going to connect to those concepts, that means you've already created that reality of your pain, of your fear happening. And then the universe, God, source, whatever you're going to call us, like, what are you doing? I'm right here. I got you. I've been with you every step of the way. Like, follow me, essentially. And as you said, you got to a place of awareness where it's like, all right, let me find peace in the present moment. And I always like to tell everyone, I teach it in some of my workshops and whatnot, where you've got your past over here. And more often than not, if we look at our past, we tend to look at it, if we're not kind of, I guess, trained in some ways, looking at it through a depressing or a negative outlook. Wow, I wish I can go back and change that. Whatever scenario it was that hurt us. Or we look to our future and we see anxiety. That's why I tend to find find worry, find stress, whatever it is. So if we look to the future, we look to our past, we find tend to be negative areas. But everything throughout scripture and history is telling us you find peace in the present moment, in the now moment. And that's why I like to tell everyone, you find the presence in the present. Meaning you come to the present moment, you find the presence, which is, as you said, the unconditional love that we started on, the God, the universe, the source, everything that was within us here. To move forward from the now present moment, you are then operating out of a higher level, the presence, whatever you want to call it, higher level energy. So it's what you did, Elisabeth, where you started looking at things from like, all right, there could be an infinite amount of great possibilities. Let me focus on that. And it helped you get through it. And I'm only expanding on these thoughts because I want listeners right now to understand the process that Elisabeth just explained to us, that she goes into in her book. Because for anyone to take just that one concept and utilize it in your own life, whether it's with your family, whether it's at work, whether it's, maybe you're driving, whatever it is for you, that is the start of a whole new life for you, essentially, because you're able to grow yourself, self-improvement, personal development, personal growth, spiritual growth, whatever you want to call it. You're becoming who you were meant to be. And Elisabeth, I believe this entire journey has allowed you, as you touched on when we started, allowed you to become who you were meant to be, because you went through the trials, you went through the tribulations, you went through everything. And if we want to look at any of the great spiritual teachers throughout history, that's exactly what they did. They went through a journey. They went through struggles. But they had their tools and practices, the spiritual aspects, to guide them every step of the way. So I give you so much credit for that, Elisabeth. That's absolutely incredible. With talking about challenges, what are some of the blessings that you found along the way? The complete other side of it. Well, the challenges could be blessings just as much, but what are some of the great moments you had along this journey for yourself?
Yeah. You know, before I answer that question, I would love to say that I love the way that you just described. Just for anyone that's listening, like you said, to acknowledge that thought
Mm-hmm.
and how that what it is that we're thinking is what it is that creates our reality.
Right.
And so the fascinating thing for me and what I learned in my experience, and really put to the test, and am continuing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Once we start to build an awareness in our life that it's not just us doing this alone, then for me, it almost became a game where it was like the challenging things that were in the horizon for me, literally and metaphorically. I started to look at them like, okay, what's there, and go into that with curiosity, because I knew that there was a potential for it to be something awesome. And it started to like break away the fear and the faith. My faith just became a lot stronger in just wanting to know and discover whatever is ahead,
That's
and
cool. Yeah.
and I love what you said about that idea of having a thought. I like to consider that. So if you have a bad thought, that is okay.
Yeah.
Everyone, we all do that every day.
Right.
But
Exactly.
for me, I love to think like, I love, just hypothetically, who knows, but for me, this is what I like to think is like, one negative thought can exist, but then once we become aware of that thought and we bring our mindfulness towards it and replace it with a positive thought, or maybe even no thought and just present moment awareness, that is like, so the one negative thought is like 1 point, whereas the positive thought's like 10 points. So it begins to,
right.
how do I say, like,
overrides it essentially.
Overrides the negative thought. So it's okay if we have negative thoughts throughout our day and throughout our lives, but to give ourselves love and compassion throughout that process, and cultivate a relationship with positive thinking, and that will start to accumulate and rapidly, the more that we build a relationship towards that type of communication with ourselves. And yeah, it's just also the idea of prayer I find so fascinating. And when you talked about manifestation, so the other interesting, like, just thought is that when we pray or we manifest something, or we want to manifest something, so in the scriptures, there's many forms, but in this case of the Bible, it says, ask and you shall receive. But the key to that is the non-attachment to the receiving and the how. So I had to release attachment to my outcome in my experience of, okay, God, please help me have a safe ride today, and have miracles along the way beyond my expectation. And then I just rode. So I would set that intention, pray for it, and then let it go, and not fixate on it throughout the day of how it's going to come together and have a specific idea of how it's all going to work out, because that takes away from the magic of the mystery. And when I just ask, and then move forth, and then allowing that space to be able to receive whatever it is that I'm meant to receive in each day. And so then, to answer your question, there were so many miracles that just blow my mind when I start to think about whether that was like me pedaling in the middle of nowhere in California through the desert in the heat of the day, and I would just stop to drink water, and people would stop and check in with me like, are you okay? Do you need water? Or I was in, I think it was in also California, middle of the desert, and I have many paths that I like to walk on my journey to God in this life, but one of them is in relation to Hanuman and Hinduism and the philosophies that originate from India, and Krishna and Radhe. So I was in the middle of California, and I go to the one and only hotel that they had there.
Okay.
And in the middle of nowhere, and it happens to be this Indian man who owns this hotel. He recognizes my Hanuman flag is behind me that I rode across the country with.
Okay.
And he recognizes my Hanuman flag and was like, I thought that was Bajrang Bal coming. and which is like a name for Hanuman. And I go inside, and in his office is a picture of Krishna and Radhe, and I'm
Okay.
just like, what? Like, I'm in the middle of California, just in the middle of nowhere, and it's just crazy how
Yeah.
that God just showed up for me in all these different magical, mysterious, amazing ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. People would stop. This one guy, I met him, and he literally, I met him, talked to him for a little while. Then, at this point, I was biking with someone else. His name's Dylan. Bless you, Dylan. Thanks for joining the ride.
You
But,
got it.
anyways, we start riding, and this guy who I had just met, I thought, like, nice to meet you. He's gone, drove off in his car. 20 minutes later, we see him coming down the road, and he pulls over on the side of the road and gives us 2 bags of groceries.
Wow.
Yeah. And like, it's just
Awesome.
miracles like that.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. I
So
love that.
many good people that
Mm.
exist in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's so awesome. And you're right, 100%. That's miracles happening because you didn't know they were coming. But two, to emphasize a point you said before going going into blessings and the miracles, the non-attachment, that is so a key to blessings coming into your life. Essentially, not to say if you're attached to something, blessings can't come in, but attachments in this life for people listening right now, it narrows your viewpoint to what possibilities there are. So for you, Elisabeth, to be non-attached to, like, hey, you say your prayer and everything, God, please help me along this path. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get to this next town, but give me the strength to do so, or please water, whatever it is, and you let it go. I'm just going to keep riding. I'm just going to keep going and going, and then groceries, and then you mentioned this guy Dylan, a friend comes along and whatnot, like the hotel, like things started happening. That to me emphasizes the fact that there is, as it states in the scriptures, help is always on the way to you. Help is always there, but we need to ask for help to come in. That's where prayer comes into play. So if you ask God, please help me today, or angels, spirit guides, whatever terms people want to use, please help me along today's path. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I know you will. That's your faith. I'm out. I'm letting go. It's in your hands now. That's putting it in God's hands. And at that point, you never know what's going to come, but it's always surprising. It's always exciting. And it always brings a sense of joy. But as touch on the key point you mentioned when we started this video, it brings in a sense of unconditional love. Love is always there for you, whether it's coming from people, whether it's coming from God, through people, God himself, a blessing along the way, a vision. You never know how the communication comes through, but it's always there. So I say that to you, but I say that to listeners and viewers right now. There is so much more to you. There's so much more to your experiences in your life. And if you're open to understanding that, take a sit, meditate, sit back and think on what you've been through. Think on your journey, think on your experience, and see what's the lesson in all of this for one, but what are the possibilities? Because if you start to think on the possibilities that we said, the manifestation and whatnot, and like, oh, it'd be, I don't know, maybe someone's listening right now. You're thinking of traveling like Elisabeth did, or you're thinking on, I don't know, a journey or a move or a new job, whatever it is. Think on the goodness and the love and the joy that you'll experience in those moments. So if we're going to emphasize the point of prayer, the scriptures teach us how to pray. And then other texts, I don't know if you dive into Elisabeth, other texts that were removed from the Bible and whatnot here or there throughout, like back when the Bible was being made, goes into deeper areas of prayer and what Jesus said in these areas and what he added to certain communications. And there's a whole story behind that and whatnot. But your emotion is what the communication is. So for people listening, when you're praying and whatnot, the emotion you feel is the energy of the universe. So if the energy of the universe, energy of God, is built off of your love, is built off of your joy, your excitement, whatever it is, when you pray and you obviously speak it, but you feel what it will feel like to have that now, and then you let it go. That's not attachment. That's like this or something better. And that's the beauty of the Bible. That's the beauty of everything, where it's like, I didn't get that job, but it's crazy how this greater job came in. It fits so much more perfectly. Or people listening for the relationship standpoint, like, how could that person leave me? Whatever it is, I thought that was perfect. But then the perfect person comes along that you were supposed to be with all along. It's like, there's so many stories, so many blessings, so many miracles throughout all of our lives. we got to take a step back and realize it, but realize non-attachment is the key to bringing this or something better in, we'll say. That's me going off on a rant, Elisabeth, because I got so fired up with what you said. But, talking about the miracles and
I
whatnot.
love it.
Tends to happen a lot. But the miracles and blessings you experience along your journey, oh my goodness, it's incredible, because just the examples that you gave of those miracles, the hotel, the guy helping, the guy with the groceries, your friend, that's a deeper sense of unconditional love. So if you sit there, and this kind of could be even a bigger question we could talk about, if you sit there and look at your entire journey, you had so many great experiences, yes, challenges, blessings, lessons. What did the journey teach you the most about yourself that you now grow with? Whether that is the unconditional love you touched on, where it's like, wow, one, I'm not alone in this, because these people are here to help me when you ask, for sure, but when God's watching over you. But two, is there a deeper lesson that you're like, you know what? That's why I went through that. That's why I went on that journey. But there's so many lessons along the path. Like, what comes to mind when I ask you, what's the greatest lesson you learned along the journey?
What a phenomenal question. There are so many that I'm still integrating, but the one biggest, like, just absolute life-changing lesson came to me while I was biking through New Mexico. And this is like, and this one was for me. They're all for me, but this one was like very, very important, and not something I think I would have ever come to realize had I not taken this leap of faith. And to do this, to leave my comfort zone of living in my beautiful home on Maui, to go bike across the southern part of the United States, like, and so when I was biking through New Mexico, I remember exactly the moment of where I was at and everything. And but what became so clear to me was that my desire in this life is not to be a spiritual person or a saintly person, or to have any type of identification to a role.
Yeah.
But to just be a good person.
Awesome.
And that alone has set me free, because my definition of a good person is knowing my intention in what I'm doing and sitting in it. And my intention is pure and good, no matter what that looks like to the outside viewer or whoever's opinion, because I know that all things are subject to change. And so so to get fixated on one person's opinion of myself would deplete me in my own incarnation, because I'm fixating on someone else's opinion that's temporary, and changing myself because of it. Where that is just that's not the game I'm wanting to play in my life, and recognizing that I'm free to be myself. And being myself is all I want to be, is a good person.
Yeah.
And so, and what that means to me can be different for everybody. But for me, it's not conforming to a box of what a good person or a saintly person or a spiritual person looks like.
Right.
You do not need, in my opinion, it does not matter what you wear, what you look like on the surface. It's the intention of where you come from within yourself. And that's what really creates a good person.
Yeah.
So catch me wearing my bikini and being a great person out there. Or being naked in a waterfall.
Awesome. It's a free spirit aspect to that, but I agree with you. And, it's funny. Yesterday I was with a client and he asked me, he goes, "Hey, Bill, can we talk?" How old is he? 21 years old. And he goes, "Hey, Bill, can we talk about spiritual stuff?" I was like, "Yeah, of course. What are your questions? I would love to dive into this." Because we were talking more on like career-wise to start the session. He wanted to kind of dive deeper. I'm like, I would love to go in this area. And he comes from a Catholic, Christian background and whatnot. And so that's the lens we were looking at things through. So I said to him, like, all right, man. And this relates to the good person aspect. And I said, let me ask you something. When you were raised, or even nowadays, what is your perspective? Is your goal to get to heaven, or is your goal to bring heaven to earth? And he sat there, he's 21, he sat there and go, I've never thought of that, but I guess it's to get to heaven. I'm like, that's fine. That's usually what we're taught growing up, is this. But if I asked you right now, if Jesus was meant to be the example we're supposed to live by, Jesus brought heaven to earth. And he taught us all these deeper lessons so we could be heaven on earth for those around us as well, which to me, Elisabeth, when you mentioning the good person, is what that is. You're bringing heaven to earth in your own way, in your own example, to shine light, to shine unconditional love to the stranger over there, to your family that you see, to your friends, to Maui, to New Hampshire, to the entire course of your journey. You are now, I believe, a higher spiritual being because you aren't attached to what that good person needs to be based off of by certain, belief systems that other people put onto you. You're now releasing that. You can be your full self and allow that heaven to shine through you, which at the end of the day, like when you, like I read the scriptures just as much. I love diving into different cultures and seeing what their scriptures say for this. And like, how does that connect to this? And it's like a puzzle, and it's incredible to witness. But when you look through those lenses without the attachment of like, they're wrong because mine said this or what, you just release it. And you're like, everyone's trying to be heaven on earth in their own way, because we're all individual spirits trying to get back to the collective, I guess you could say, trying to get to heaven. But if God and the whole goal, if we want to use Jesus as the lens, was to bring heaven to earth to show us how to do the same, that means that to let go as you have done and walk in that goodness, to walk in that love. That's what you're called to do, because it's what we're all called to do. But not too many people think like that. You have to go through journeys and trials and challenges and miracles to be able to see the world through that lens. So I give you so much credit, Elizabeth, because the spiritual work you've done yourself and the course of your journey, call it destiny in the sense that you were supposed to, but call it the fact that you took the action steps to act on that dream, that passion that was placed in you. You've walked your entire path in faith, and that's allowed you to shine so much more heaven to other people. I think that's the journey we're all supposed to be on in our own way. And everyone's at different levels. The beauty of the spiritual self is that some people come in and they have to go through all these lessons to get to this. And then, if we really want to dive into it in next life, they jump on to the next level and so on and so forth. All depends on the lens we look at the world through. But your journey, Elisabeth, has shown that you have greatly elevated so you can be that love, that joy, that goodness, that heaven to other people. So I commend you. Be a good person, because that's at the end of the day what it is. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think when we try to put ourselves into a box
Mm-hmm.
of the idea of what a good person is, and to conform to that creates a type of inner conflict. Whereas when, like what you said, read it all, take it all in, but then go yourself and discover what that means for each individual in our world, and how to, like, I love how you said, cultivate heaven on earth through our own experiences.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's available to all of us. So, and we've all gone through different layers of suffering throughout our lives to teach us these lessons as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are both, we're simultaneously a soul and a spiritual being, but in this human form that's come to learn lessons. And that's beautiful. And, and I love that you talk about Jesus, and the lessons that he came to teach in his incarnation are so valuable. And I love reflecting on them and relating to them. And for all of us, it says in the scriptures that you're born into this world of like form, but then you're born again through water. You're born again through the spirit. And so each one of us have that opportunity to be born again in this lifetime. And that doesn't just mean you can't just be born again once. You can be born again 1,000 million times in one lifetime. And it's just an opportunity to continue to refine I love how you talk about, becoming our higher selves, becoming that the form that feels best to us. But we have to go through this life to kind of, taste this ice cream to see if we like that flavor, or do we like this flavor, and just try these different things and see what feels good for us as an individual in our life. And really, the true unconditional love is what really feels good, not what temporarily feels good and temporarily relieves the suffering of our experience, but what really helps us to, remove the suffering of our experience. Or it's not necessarily to remove, because there might still be suffering in our human experience. People die, will die. We go through this in this lifetime, but it teaches us to have more compassion and grace throughout our life, and just recognizing, how to, like Ram Dass, who is one of my spiritual teachers, he talks about, having grist for the mill. And it's like so the suffering is the grist for our mill. And that is what we're all experiencing in our life. But there's grace that's also given to us throughout this process that we can tap into, and it helps us to relieve the suffering. Although the suffering is still there on a level, it's not as intense once we start to create a higher awareness towards what's our life experiences.
Right.
I hope that wasn't too.
No, I love that. That's what I want to take people deep in these conversations. So I'm glad that you added to that. That's huge. But no, I completely agree with you in all of that. It's so fascinating to see all the experiences we go through that are trying to help us. So one thing that came to mind when you were speaking to me is, so I studied psychology back in college. I'm able to help people in the mental health area as much as the spiritual area, which I love merging them together because they're so intertwined. But in psychology, we learn about learned behaviors. And it's funny because when we're kids, we have all these learned behaviors. Well, learned behaviors could be the belief system that you grew up on, which tells you to live in a box. But as you grow older and as you start to grow spiritually, you have to go through a process of unlearning those behaviors and unlearning those belief systems, because they might be a limitation preventing you from seeing all that God wants you to see, from allowing you to step into your higher and best self. And that's why, I love posing the question that I mentioned earlier, but I posed to my client yesterday: what's your belief? Is it to get to heaven, or is it to bring heaven to earth? And most people would say it's to get to heaven, because that's a belief we were told. I'm like, all right, well, let's shift it. What does this new belief and perspective bring to you? And a lot of I never thought of it. Like that concept, I never thought of it that way, I believe is knocking on the door of something new in your life, knocking on the door of a new version of you to elevate. Like, oh, wow. And it's like when you're a kid and, I don't know, we learn how to spell. It's a whole new world. We learn how to read. Oh my goodness, I can go to a library and get any book I want. What? I can read all these? It's a whole new perspective. That's everything in life. It's like when you learn something new or someone comes in, I love asking people a question in sessions and whatnot. And I love when their response is, I don't know. I was like, phenomenal. That means you're about to learn something new. A lot of us feel so shame. Oh, I don't know. And we try and make something. No, I want you to say that, because now you're growing. Now you're on your journey, and that's everything in life. So I agree with everything you said, Elizabeth. I love it. I feel like I've gotten completely sidetracked from your book. So I want to bring it back to the topic at hand. But so with your book releasing and whatnot in next week, tell people, where can they find it? Where can they dive deeper into you and all the unconditional love that you're bringing through this book? But where can they learn more about you? Because like I mentioned at the intro, I know we mostly want to focus on the book and this topic and then let the spirit lead us, which it has. But at the same time, you're bringing mantras, you're bringing art, you're bringing music, you're bringing all these areas. If people listening right now loved everything you said, because it connects so well together in a golden thread. If you look at it in that concept, where can people find the book? Where can people find you, listen to your music and whatnot, listen to your mantras, and just get to grow themselves through the growth you've gone through yourself?
Well, so my book will be available on Amazon, and then I'm also going to So this entire pilgrimage has also just set me, you know, Yeshua also came and he said that he didn't come. I don't know if I'm quoting this exactly true, but maybe it wasn't to bring peace, but to set the world on fire.
I love
And
that.
so in that sense, the way I interpret that is that to be an example of the change, like Gandhi says, to be the change,
Mm-hmm.
to be a representation of another option for us as for our individual selves,
Yeah.
to choose, what path we want to take. And so this pilgrimage has set me on fire. And, and so I definitely, for a while now, I'm going to be doing 6 months probably in my home on Maui, and people, you're welcome to come support the beautiful island and the native culture that exists there.
Mm.
And also, if you'd like to, Ram Dass does have a loving awareness sanctuary.
Mm.
There's meditations on Thursdays and kirtan on Sundays. And you could also do a personal retreat there as well. And get to really dive into your own process and be on a beautiful land and surrounded by beautiful people who can support that. So that is one way to meet me in person, potentially, and also get connected to this sangha of amazing humans who exist. And but there are also other locations as well, and in places throughout the world that good people exist, and I can testify to that after biking across the southern part of the United States and the Bible Belt, where people are afraid of. I had people holding my Hanuman flag who are like praying over us, and around the Hanuman flag, but they're, obviously they love Jesus, and so do I. But so we're all speaking the same language when we go beyond the identification of forms or whatever. But so book on Amazon, and then also I'll be doing book tours for the foreseeable future. And this is it's a huge thing for me I'm so stoked for you and to give you tips on my process. For me to publish a book. I've actually written one, and I have a manuscript on Maui of my first book, but I've never published it yet.
Really? Okay.
So this is my second book, but my first publication. So
that's awesome. Okay.
Yes. So I'm so excited. And the book I gave myself creative freedom to instead of like by date or any of that, I just decided to allow it to be an example of my personal experience on this peace pilgrimage across the country. So I just let God guide me, and the notes they're just kind of the notes and the poems and the reflections and all of the different parts of the book are uniquely organized by the universe. And I wanted it to be that way because I want it to be an example of the human experience, which isn't just always linear and you're always stoked on one straight and narrow path. It's like, no, there are so many unexpected moments and sadnesses that happen and heartbreaks or all of this that's a part of the journey and the overall experience that creates the way I called it actually on the back of the cover is a quilt. You have all these different sections of a quilt that come together to make this beautiful masterpiece. So that is our life, and that is my book.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so I'm also going to be doing a book tour down the coast of California. First, that'll be my first book tour from after going to my friend's wedding in San Francisco. I'll be traveling down to San Diego, where I started the Peace Pilgrimage. So full circle.
That's really cool. That's really, especially now coming back to it with your book. That's 100% full circle.
I know, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. There's so many nuggets of information you just touched on and going with that, especially the quilt concept. That's all of our lives. That's 100% all of our lives. There's so many different experiences, different whatnot. I think we all think it's supposed to fit so well together. At the end of the day, when we've passed on, we will see how everything fits so well together. But in the meantime, it's supposed to look like this, as a quilt should be, essentially, where it's different designs, different patterns, all and so forth and so forth. But I think that's so awesome, Elizabeth. I love that. The book is available next week on Amazon. So people listening right now, this is being recorded on July 25th. When's the actual date, Elizabeth, for them listening? If they come to this, I don't know, in a month from now, can they come check it? Or was there people listening to this is going live Sunday? Is there an exact date it's going to be on Amazon? If people catch this on day one where it releases on YouTube, like, can they just go around to Amazon? We can put the link in the description too if you have it. Like, where else can they find the book, or where else can they find you, your Instagram? Like, where do you want them to come find your journey?
So Instagram's a great place to connect with me.
Okay.
And you have my Instagram, so
Yep.
potentially we could put my link up there.
Of course I can.
And then I'll also release my tour date and the book release date as well. But I would say August 1st.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds like a great day for me.
Right.
So right now I'm like in the editing process of, that's the thing. I actually just released on Spotify, on like all of the platforms of for music and podcasts, I suppose. I've been recording albums, but more like meditation records. So there's some mantra, there's a meditation, and then a talk. And the most recent one I did was Morph 2.0. And the reason it's called Morph 2.0 is because the first one was Morph. And I love that name. Like that just, when I was choosing the name, that one just brought me joy. And so I went with it. And like what you said, like, the energy is what matters. And so it's like, go with your joy and go with your gut of like what feels good. And that's so funny. This entire record is about the creative process and the evolution of the creator or an artist. And so I released the first one, which was just Morph, and then I completely deleted it and redid the entire thing because I didn't like it. Wow. And so I did Morph 2.0, but it's so funny because it's like exactly what the entire thing's about is that process.
Gotcha.
And just being open to, like, normally when I start something, I'm like, oh my God, this looks like shit. Like, I hate it. Like, I'm giving up. But you just, for me, what I've learned is like, just keep going. Like, keep going through it. And this pilgrimage, pedaling across the country, it's so relative to our day-to-day lives. And these lessons of like, when as artists or creators or just as humans, we just go through it. And go through the shit and then see where we're being led through that, because the lotus rises through the muck. And so we are that lotus. And so when we follow the path of nature, that path of intelligence to go through the darkness, the mud, the unknown, we'll rise inevitably into this beautiful outcome of an experience. And that is also like what I keep wanting to call it a tapestry, but the quilt is like, each one of those sections, one of them might look like black and horrible and really intense, and but then another one's going to be like rainbows and sunshine. And then, but when you look back at it and then you take a look back at the whole experience and you look at each section, you might reflect on that and be like, wow, this is so beautiful, to see the darker areas and to see that more intense parts of it and how that all actually brings it all together. And so that is what I've experienced. And also writing my book is hundreds of hours of not just the experience of like going through what I did in order to like write or to like birth the content, but also just going through going through and just sitting in the process, sitting in the muck. And now it's in the design form and just sitting in that and allowing for, even though I have an expectation of what I wanted, allowing for, if it's not going to work out this time, all right, we're just going to roll with the way that it is going to work and recognize that there's infinite spaciousness for, possibilities. Endless possibilities.
Right.
And I don't know if you or anyone listening is familiar with the book Be Here Now.
I don't think so. No.
Oh,
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay,
Yeah.
Be Here Now was written by Ram Dass in like
Okay.
the 60s, 70s, late 60s, early 70s probably. And so this book actually, he got it, the blessing of Maharaji, who was his guru in India.
Okay.
He blessed the book, and then Ram Dass brought this book to the West, and it is in a lot of forms, it could be considered a spiritual Bible to some people.
Okay.
I have not read all of Be Here Now. However, it comes up and I'm very familiar with it, and I have read parts of it, and that's a way longer story, but basically it's just because that's my relationship with my guru, my spiritual teacher. It's just always a cosmic play. So but Be Here Now, the first edition of it, he wrote it, I think he was in New Mexico, and Ram Dass, and it started off with pages that they just put into pizza boxes.
Okay.
And that is how that book started.
Wow.
And now there are multiple editions, so it's evolved. You know what I mean? Like these projects, that's what they started with, and they just went with it, and they believed in it so much. Ram Dass and the people who helped him, get it out there. They just used what they had, and they worked with that. Now, one of those pizza boxes is worth like $5,000 or $6,000.
Really?
Yeah, if you have your
Wow.
yeah. So it's like, don't underestimate yourself. Don't judge yourself for what you have in the moment, because you never know what a simple pizza box that cost the company probably $1 or 50 cents to have, now it costs $6,000, $7,000.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, for me, that's something I always remind myself as a creator, is like, just trust it. Beyond my knowing, have faith.
Yeah. Right. Oh, I love that. It's funny, in going over that, it comes to mind to me. You mentioned like people just keep going, go through the muck, become that Lotus Concept, as you said. I always tell everyone, like, what happens if you don't quit? Eventually you win. You don't lose if you don't quit. So it's like, just keep going. Don't quit on yourself. Don't quit on your goal, your creativity, whatever it is, your passion, because eventually you'll win. And in the world of eventually is the shaping and the refining that you go through to be able to win, whether it is a book, whether it is music, whether it is, starting out with a pizza box, whether it is whatever it might be. But I completely agree with you with everything, Elisabeth. And it's so powerful. So I appreciate you sharing that. I definitely want to have you on here again, because I feel like we could just go with certain spiritual topics and teach people and give a platform to that. So I definitely want that to happen. But before we close this whole thing out, tell me, is there a lasting message you want to leave with anyone before we close this whole thing out right now? Yeah, let it come to you.
No, my message is just to take a deep breath. Actually, I'll also share as I pedaled across the country, I wore a shirt that said Peace Pilgrim on the front and pedaling 3,000 miles for peace on the back.
Okay.
And after finishing in St. Augustine, Dylan dropped me off in DC. We rode to DC, and then he took the car and went home to Illinois and dropped me off in DC. Because it was important for me to, since I was coming home to New Hampshire anyways, to go to the White House and meditate for peace for a moment. So and play music. And so I was sitting outside the White House meditating for peace. And really what that means is, we should definitely keep talking on another podcast another day, because there's, it's just
so much.
Yeah. I don't want to go into, too much, but I really want to emphasize that do it for yourself. Anything that you do it for yourself. Do not have an expectations for others to do it with you or for you or to change with you. One has to just choose to be in love with yourself. And that's not in an egoic or in a selfish way. It's to truly just do what brings you joy in your life and not have an expectation for others to follow.
Right.
But if they do, then you're stoked, it doesn't, but you're not you don't need that in order to be stoked.
Yeah.
And so when I'm meditating for peace, I'm not meditating for peace with an expectation of an outcome. I'm meditating because I'm embodying peace in the present moment.
I get that, right?
And so it's giving people an opportunity to witness what that is, and then choose it if they want that for themselves, you know?
For sure.
But
Right?
somebody asked me afterwards, I was interviewed, and one of the questions was, what message do you have for the Biden administration?
Okay.
And the message that came through to me, which I think is applicable to all beings, including myself, is to take 5 minutes a day to meditate and to just connect with your breath and breathe.
Right.
To just connect with yourself in your center and go from there.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. I love it 100%. I agree with it tenfold. And in one of my workshops, I agree with the breath. I try and emphasize that point to people. So I love how we're on a very similar wavelength, where the breath is the only thing that's ever in the now moment. I can't breathe the breath I just breathed. I can't breathe the next breath until I go through this breath. So for people listening right now, when you focus on your breath, whether it's a meditation, maybe you're walking, whatever it is, when you're focusing on your breath, you are bringing everything back to the now. So from the now moment, you can create. From the now moment, you aren't stressed. You were stressed before, not now. You have your peace in the present moment and everything. So I emphasize everything Elisabeth just said. And Elisabeth, that's a beautiful way to end this entire interview. But like I said, I want to have you back on because we can run with so many different areas, you know, right? But that's phenomenal. But I thank you so much for being here. I cannot wait to read your book. I can't wait for people to read your book as well. But I can't wait I cannot wait for people to find you on your book tour. Because that's the next step from where the pedaling for peace started. Full circle, as you said, but now another circle is starting, you know, and you're bringing more and more knowledge and more wisdom to more and more people, whether it is on the steps of the White House, whether it is somewhere else, like to see where your journey is leading to an incredible area. So I thank you so much for your time. People, as always, like this message on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button below. If at any moment, anything Elisabeth said, anything I said, or you want someone to know about her book, if at any moment this entire message, someone popped into your mind, that is a clear-cut sign to you that they need to hear this message, as a clear-cut sign that they could benefit from something that was said. Share it to that person. Not to share me, not to share Elisabeth, not even to share her book, but to lend a hand and help someone else out. That is the unconditional love we talked about. That is you being a good person, as we talked about. That's you acting on a point of creativity for yourself. Lend a hand and shine that light to someone else. And at the end of the day, if it helps spread the book, phenomenal. If it helps spread the channel, phenomenal. But you're doing it because it's the goodness for yourself to lend a hand to someone else. And then, as always, guys, please subscribe to Once a Week on YouTube. That number is going up, which means we're helping more and more people. And that's phenomenal to see. That's our goal here, to help as many people as we can. If you're in need of a coach, head to abilitylifecoaching.com. You just have a free call with me. I'm be right there for you because I want to be right there for you. But lastly, Elisabeth, thank you once again for being here, diving into your book, diving into everything. I can't wait to have you on again.
Billy, it was so much fun talking with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Until the next time, right?
Namaste. Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Have a good one, guys.
You know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it back there. Yeah, I got game, God in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it Turnpike Miles. Yeah, it's Bugle signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock.